All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And again, thanks for everyone for being here. I do appreciate it here. I will tell you just real quick before we get started, you do have access to this presentation. The Voces will share the link with you. So you have full access to this. And I understand we only have a half hour. So as we go through, you may see me skipping around a little bit or maybe skipping over something. And that's just because of the time constraint. But I did include the link to the presentation because I want you to use this as a resource. I want you to come back to this as a resource. So if we miss anything or in the time frame, if I go a little too quickly in one area or not, that you can come back and take a look at it. So just understand that if you're like, whoa, we went too quick, or I missed something, or I skipped something, that you do have access. So hopefully that will be a resource for you in the future. I'm going to kind of skip over all the niceties here, the introductions. Dave did a great job. Thank you. I will tell you the contact information is here. It's going to be in the presentation at the beginning and at the end. And I want you to feel free to contact me anytime. I do want to tell you though, if you contact me, I am a classroom teacher and it's just a really busy time. So if it takes me a day or two to get back to you, I am not ignoring you. It just probably means that I have a lot of responsibilities, not only with my job and my family, but I promise I will get back to you as soon as I can. And I am not ignoring you. So please feel free to contact me with any questions or anything like that in the future. So I just want to put that in the background for you. All right. And basically, like I said, I'm going to start paraphrasing a little bit today. You can come back and read this. It's called Engaging Students Through Reading. And I just want us to get the really big picture here of what we're trying to do, okay, is reading. Is that I want my students to engage with our readers in class. I feel reading is a very important skill, if not one of the most powerful for language growth. But here's the idea to say, hey, how can we drive our students back to the text in more than just reading and answering maybe some comprehension questions? Because my goal is to drive my students back to their text to get that repetition with the reading, but I want to do it in a way that they show me comprehension and that they understood what they read, and hopefully in an engaging and an enjoyable way for them. And the activities that we're going to go over, I really try to make very low prep for you so you can immediately take them back to your classroom. So just kind of think, I want you to keep that idea that driving students back to the text to get that repetition in an engaging way to show that they have comprehended what they have read. All right. And the background, we read that, that's okay. Basically, the short of that is I was just really looking through my years in the classroom. This is my 20th year in the classroom. How do I engage my students past just reading and maybe doing some questions? So the only thing I do want to kind of take a moment here to look at before we get into the activities is the importance of reading. I really feel that reading is probably the if not the most important skill and activity we can do with our students, both actually in the L1 and the L2 or L3. Because reading is so powerful for students, and you can see some of kind of the ideas that reading is 10 times faster than intensive vocabulary instruction. Reading may be the easiest and single most powerful means of promoting large-scale vocabulary growth. And then here, where Dr. Bill Van Patten says, for maximum vocabulary development, learners need to read all along the way, since most vocabulary development in both L1 and L2 is incidental, meaning that vocabulary is learned as a byproduct of some other intention, which is normally reading. And you guys can come back to that, but it's just the idea of reading is so powerful, especially for vocabulary growth in the target language. I will say, because we're going to jump right into the activities because of our time constraint here, that I just want to let you know that you guys are the experts in your classroom. You know your students and you know their abilities. And so take anything you see here today and implement it as you see fit. Change it, bend it, do whatever fits you, and you be you. And it's hopefully going to enjoy some success with that. And I will tell you too that as we go with these activities, just kind of keep in the back of your mind that some activities can be leveled for lower and upper levels, but really everything is just bound by your students' abilities. Just make sure everything's in bounds, meaning it's like at their level, it's level appropriate. Don't ask your lower levels to do something they're not ready for, because you're going to get the effective filter to go up and they're going to shut down. So you just really want to try to feel out that leveling with your students to see where they're at, and you can level it up and down as needed. Okay. By the way, I will kind of check over this chat. If I really need to look over at the chat, just holler at me and I'll take a look. Otherwise, I'll just keep going with the presentation. So are we ready to dive in? Are we ready to get to some activities, I hope? All right. So hopefully we're all going to take away something today and it's going to be good. All right. So I should make one more note here. The examples that I'm going to pull out in my presentation are from El Documento or Das Document. It is a level one reader. It has 100 unique words in it. It's available through Voces. I hear they actually bribed you to be here today with a $3 coupon. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Voces. And so these were the examples in the pages that come out of that book. But with that being said, a lot of this can be done exactly with the materials that you have now. You don't need any kind of a special reader, but I'll be using the examples based on this book. So when I wrote this book, I do like comprehension questions. I think they're great, but I always ask myself, is there more that you can do to show that is there more that students can do to show that they comprehended it? I do comprehension questions in my class. In fact, they're included in the book. Here's a page out of the book. I think they are important, and there's always a time and place for everything, and they're there, and it's a good reason. Okay, so let's start thinking though. Can we get past comprehension questions, which are important and are good, and I encourage you to do them. And as you go through, one of the simplest things I found with my students after we've done this a little bit, we've done a few chapters of comprehension questions, is I just ask them to go back through the chapter and can they write the comprehensions questions for me? Can they ask me questions to see if I comprehended it? And the students really buy into this because they're writing the questions and they're going back to the text and they're finding what's important to them. But I will tell you, if you stop and think, when you ask the students to write the questions and they're going to ask maybe me the questions, they really think it's great to ask the teacher, what are they going to be doing with the text? Again, we want to keep this in our mind that I'm driving them back to this text. I want the repetition of them continuously reading the text, and maybe it doesn't even feel like reading for them. So just have them come up with the questions, and they can ask you, they can ask partners, they can ask the class. It's very, in a way, it becomes very personalized for the students. And I can tell you here, one of the tips, if you have little whiteboards in class, I can even make my comprehension questions an oral activity. I may just ask them orally and have them write down the answer for it instead of seeing it. So you can take comprehension questions and kind of bend them instead of just giving to your students and answering them. All right. How another thing I like to do with my students is I have them actually read for specific words and vocabulary structures or themes as we're going through. So maybe we just worked with a chapter in the book, right? And I say, all right, I want us to go back because again, I want to drive them back and I don't want it to feel like reading, but I may tell them to look for specific words, vocabulary structures, or themes. And for example, I may hear like on this one, maybe people that they're looking for, locations, dates, times, just basic information, places. So again, but what we'll do is again, I want you to picture in your mind, what are your students going to do? They're going to go back to the text and they're going to keep getting that repetition through reading. So then maybe just fill in this. Or maybe I say, hey, just looking, hey, in this chapter, can I find some basic information we can say? Are there positive phrases, negative phrases that we find? So then I can target positive, negatives within the reading. Or maybe I want to target a theme such as clothing with my students or what is mentioned. And after reading the chapters, you'll understand which themes you can target. With clothes, accessories, colors, and I guess patterns. My Spanish isn't that great. Or again, this doesn't necessarily have to do with the book, but I'm just trying to give you ideas that you could, if they're talking about rooms, is there a situation, and you can have go back through and have them target this with their students. Does that kind of make sense? It's just one simple text, say, hey, what do I want to pull out? Structures, or what themes, what do I want to target with my students? And I can drive them right back to the book. And they're going to be reading and rereading, but they're not going to feel like they're reading, but they're going to show you that they're comprehending because for them to give you those answers, they have to comprehend the text. I'm hoping that makes sense. Does that make sense? All right. So what we're gonna do, they asked you to bring a pen and paper. It's your turn now, all right? Or if you want to do the chat, that's fine. Okay. What I do with my students sometimes is you can even do more direct targeting. I may say, for example, write down 3 sentences from the text or my chapter. These are short chapters in these books. It's designed for level one students that contain the word. For example, in this one, I may say, find the word good or says. Maybe I'm working on certain verbs or I want to find the topic of technology and related items. And while you're doing this, I'll explain the book. But here it's your turn. I want you to go ahead and I want you to write down right here in the bolded words here in English. I put in a German example here from the book. But can you write down any words or verbs that deal with technology and technology related Let me try it again. And related items. Just write the word once. So, for example, the word computer comes up more than once, just write the word computer once. But I'm going to give you, like I said, we're on a little bit of a time crunch here. So I'm just going to give you about maybe 1 minute, if that, to read this and see what's happening. But I want you to feel, what are the students when I say, hey, can you go back to that text and find, or this part and find technology words? So I'm going to give you 1 minute. And while you're doing that, if you don't mind, I'm going to talk here about the book a little bit and explain it. So as you guys are doing that, this book, it's a really, there's actually a part two coming out of this book. It's just in a little series here. Here's the idea. There's two cousins. They're university students and they're studying. Long story short, is they're at a cafe. They are talking. They have to go to class. Henry finds a USB stick on the ground, and he thinks it's his cousin's because she studies computer science. Let me back up. A lot of this book has current technological terms. I tried to really bring it up into where you're using technology, computers in real settings with computer science. Uh, and so anyway, he gives it to her. I don't want to give anything away. It ends up not being her USB stick or UBS stick, and she ends up finding a document on the stick that kind of leads to this whole thing. And then it kind of finds that maybe somebody is following them and they really want this back because it has sensitive information on it. So it's really a fast mover and exciting book. And there's actually going to be a part two that kind of follows through with this here out shortly. It's in its final moments of getting laid out. Okay, I hope I didn't distract you enough. I'm looking in the chat. Okay, I'm looking at the chat here real quick. Okay, I've seen some great words. You guys are finding this technologically related words, so I'm hitting this theme with my students. But I want you to think, what were you doing as I was asking you to do this? So maybe we read this once as a class and did our activity, but now I asked you to do this. I'm hoping you're seeing that you are now driving right back to that text and you're reading it, and your students are going to do the exact same thing. They're going to reread it. They might skim it, that's all right, but they are getting that repetition with the structures and vocabulary as it continues to reread it, because chances are maybe you went through it twice. So I hope that makes sense what I try to do with my students. And again, you can do that with just structures or themes or just even individual words, however you see fit. Okay. Are we doing okay? Are we doing okay, everyone? I know, like I said, I'm probably moving a little quick, but again, I want to get through some things here. Okay. So I know that sometimes too, with our books, maybe we try to tell our students, let's summarize the chapter, or let's summarize what we read, which is fine, or just retell. That is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But maybe we can break that down a little bit for our students to do summaries in a little bit way that's a little bit more approachable, especially for beginners, or just to give it to a different feel. So, for example, instead of me saying, "Hey, can you summarize the chapter for me?" Maybe if I could you summarize the chapter, especially for my beginning students, with main words or bullet points. It's because that's very seems very approachable to students when you're just asking for main words or bullet points that they feel would summarize the chapter, get the overall feeling, maybe. Or maybe you can say, after you've read the book for a little bit, they've got to know the characters. Can they actually try to describe the characters? Ask them to describe the characters, because by doing so, they're showing you they comprehended the emotions and the actions of the characters through the book. But can you have them just use some adjectives that describe the character? And maybe if we want to level it up, where you can ask our students, like, what are the characters thinking, doing, or feeling? Or maybe we want a little bit should be thinking in the conjunctive, or how they should be doing or feeling, or even in a situation. And what's really fun is turn it around. Ask them what should they not be thinking. Like I said, there's a lot of action in the book. So like there's a certain scene, it's like, what should they not be thinking in this scene? It's kind of fun. That's actually a lot of fun to see what students come up with, because it shows you they comprehend to be able to tell you the opposite. But another one is sometimes with my students, I can say, hey, let's just take a chapter, and this is pretty quick. Can you convey the emotions or the actions of characters, the scene or the chapter with only emojis or memes? It's pretty fun. You'll definitely get some interesting responses about the emojis and memes, but it's very creative and they really enjoy that. So, because what they're going to do is they're going to go back to the chapter, say, hey, let's do chapters 3 with emojis and memes only. And we can do that on a Google Doc or whatever. And they start building it, but they're going to be flipping through their book. They're going to go back and read that chapter, because emojis and memes, to me, hey, that's great, but I'm really worried about them driving back to the book, if that makes sense. Or maybe you can try to make it break it down a little bit more approachable, like a 10-3-1 approach. Maybe we just ask our students, hey, in this chapter, what are 10 important words from the chapter? Were there three new words that you learned, or what's one question you have from this chapter? Again, just kind of thinking they're showing you they're comprehending by doing this. Or if depending on where you're at and what you want to target, maybe three adjectives, two nouns, one infinitive verb form. If you can do with your students, and again they'll try back to the text, and this can be anything. It could be three emotions, two locations, one cultural element. It really is just a quick way if you don't have a lot of time for students, just do like a 10-3-1, 3-2-1, 5-4-2. It doesn't matter. You can make up and just kind of find something for them to drive back to the text. So, okay, hopefully that's making sense. And then, like I said, everything's bound by their levels. So with my upper level students, when we read, and sometimes we do read this when the new book comes out, my levels 3 and 4, they absolutely read it with me. In fact, they generally are my field testers with my ones and twos to give me feedback before the final project. But I always ask them, like when they relate, I always relate it. I try, not always, but many times I relate it back to my students and I ask, how do you feel when you read the chapter in the story? Do you identify with a certain character in the story, or who do you identify most with in the story? And then again, you get those conditional sentences where you're into the what would you do if you were in this situation? Again, I'm just leveling up, so my upper levels have a little bit more exposure where they're able to do this, or ask them what would you do or say differently in a situation, because this book El Documento or Das Document has tons of dialogue. It's so great, lots of dialogue. It's for acting and you can be so creative with it. Or hey, Venn diagram, I feel like it's an oldie but a goodie. Sometimes I just say, hey, illustrate the differences and similarities for me with a character. So, and again, these are usually, they go pretty quick, very approachable by students, and it drives them back to the text. Okay, you guys are going to be up one more time here, okay? I call this condensing content. I'm just going to have a student read a chapter or the text, and I'm going to have them write down five or whatever number. That number is kind of arbitrary. The most important sentences that retell that story or that section. I just tell them they're not allowed to change or combine sentences, and they have to be original sentences. So you guys are going to try it. You can do that in the chat, or if you have your piece of paper. Again, we're going to look at the bolded here in English. Here's a Spanish page that I took out, but write down four of the most important sentences that retell the chapter. Again, you're not allowed to rechange, or you're not allowed to change or combine sentences. So I'm going to give you just really 1 minute here. This is our scene. Hopefully you guys can see that. And I want you to say, hey, if I told you, hey, tell me about this in 4 sentences. How would you explain to me? Summarize this in 4 sentences directly from the text. Don't change it. So I'm going to give you just 1 minute to read through and say, hey, which four would I choose to say best summarizes this? Okay, I'll give you about, well, like maybe 20 more seconds here. And again, if you're not writing it down, you're just kind of going, I just hope you're feeling what it is that my students and your students will do. Because what they're going to be doing is just going back and rereading this text, and they're going to reread. And I always make it like the smaller the number, the much harder it is to find that summary. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind of what your students are doing. So we'll give you about, I don't know, 5, 10 more seconds. And I know you say, wow, that must be it. You're like, I need more time. That's a good feeling. And you can always give your students much more time. Like I said, I am just condensing this down real quick here. So I know that's very, very tough. So, but hopefully you're seeing again what your students are going to go through and what they're going to be doing, and the value of just of going back over the text and driving them back to the text. And again, for those 4 sentences or whatever the number you chose, it's going to have to show comprehension, that they can actually understand what they read because they're summarizing it with those sentences. So, okay, I don't mean to rush anybody, but I'm going to continue on here. And we're still working on it. I'll just keep it. I have to probably, I think we're about down to, geez, 7, 8 minutes. Again, I'm going to skip a little bit here. I want you to come back and use this as a resource. Contact me if you have any questions. I could talk hours about all this stuff. I've got tons of activities. Tell Voces you want me to come back. I'll do more with Voces and you guys. We can meet to take our time. It'll be fun. Other than that, so yeah, I'm just kind of looking here real quick. Yeah. Okay. All right. Maybe if you get a little bit more with your creative students, you have a concept, you have a mind map. Okay. You can be done on a board, or if you have whiteboards, instead of having them write summaries or sentences from the story, can you create a visual mind map of the story using words and short sentences? This one is a lot of fun. This was not my idea. It's called Blackout Poetry. If you have not done this, I really highly recommend you try doing this. Take a page from the book, copy it because they're gonna need a piece of paper. There is a digital version. I'll show you that in a minute. But basically, what it is I'm gonna let me show you the examples first. This is what they call blackout poetry. Okay, and they're taking a page from the text, so you read it, and the idea is that you can black out certain parts of the text or illustrate certain part of the text to create a summary, to create a new scene in the story. You can create a character, feelings, emotions, or topics and themes. Or you can just see, hey, how creative can you be with this page? Here's your text, black it out. It may have nothing to do with the book, but I promise you, they really enjoy it because they're going to get very creative to come up with their own sentences by blacking out the words, and they're going to be driving back to the page or that section that you told them to use or you handed out to create their own. So that's a lot of super fun, and students really like it and they get super creative with it. So I'd really highly recommend it. But also there is here a link that will give you a Google slides or PowerPoint if you want to do it online. You can also do it online. So all right. By the way, I will mention hopefully you're familiar with Reader's Theater. The book has tons and tons of dialogues in it. So there's great for acting, having students act it out, or being the director, involving the class. There's a lot of opportunity for that, for students to get involved that way if you have a rather outgoing class. All right, we're almost there. Uh, we things you can do with your students, and now you guys can come back to this, is a lot of fun. I have fun with doodling in class, and I've written quite about a lot about it on the on my blog and shared activities about doodling and the power of doodling in class. So, for example, I may take a chapter, and we may have worked with it before or not, or a scene from that chapter, and I ask them to doodle the story. And basically, what it turns into is I will read the story out loud, in my case, German, and they have to draw the story and illustrate the story as I go. Okay, so there, and you can set parameters with, hey, you can't use any words in your doodling, maybe only stick figures. You can use onomatopoeia, whatever it is that you want to set the parameters. But the students really enjoy this, especially your more creative students, and it allows them to get the oral input of the book because you'll read it a couple times. I don't recommend anything too long with this, but the students will doodle the scene that is happening where there's a lot of action, and then they share their work. It's a lot of fun. I just put a couple things here about doodling and the power of doodling in here if you want. There's a whole series I put about doodling in my class, and doodling just sounds a little, I don't know, elementary for me, but it's a very powerful. So drawing strategies there also. So I don't know. We only got 5 minutes. I was going to have you try this out with your piece of paper with me. I was going to read the scene to you and have you doodle what it came up with and share, and then we could have talked about some activities you do post and have students do retell what they did. So, but again, I think we're about out of time, but I will leave you with one little bonus here. Sometimes I call it this just needs to feel like school. Okay. Sometimes it just needs to feel like school for my students. And because a lot of times my class does not feel like a class you're used to. So we have to kind of work through that sometimes. But hey, this just shows students how important context is. I really give students the sheet. All right. I give them a word or structure. Maybe I have them listed on the board or it's pre-filled out. And I don't tell them what it means. And I just have them make a prediction. What do you think this word or structure means right here? And then we go and reread the story. And then they give a prediction of what they think it means after the stories. And I ask them, what were the clues, the context, and the words in that story that helped you figure it out? Because a lot of times they will get it right after reading, and it shows them the important context of reading and how important reading is. And but it also has them go drive back a little bit to say, hey, how did I figure it out? Was there a word? What was going on in the scene? Was there a topic so it made sense to fill in? So, okay, with that being said, I feel I went pretty quick here. I apologize for skipping a little bit. Come back to it. We can talk a long time about this topic, but I hope you got something out of this. And I want you to try it. If you do, let me know how it goes. Really contact me. Or if you try something new, share it. I think it's great. So here's the contact information. And we got about 5 minutes for questions. I want to respect the time here. So if anyone has questions, I'd be happy to answer some questions. Okay, I think we got Keith typing a question here, but feel free to jump in because, like I said, I think we got like 4 minutes here according to my clock.
I have one, Eric.
Sure, yeah.
Can you think of an example that would work well with a nonfiction text?
The nonfiction text. All right. I
One of the
think when you
things you
get to,
just presented, just put it in nonfiction for me.
yeah, really, you can take a lot of these activities and just put them into nonfiction. You're probably going to get into more of the summary type ones. Like, can you use bullet points or main words to summarize what you read here with nonfiction? Or you go back to the more of the specific ones, like that sheet that said, "Hey, can you write down what people are mentioned here, or what places or dates?" Kind of like we saw in that. I'm going to scroll up. Sorry, I don't mean to
Yeah, I
make
was
anyone
actually
shoot.
thinking that template, where you had the time. I was,
Yeah,
I'm
like that
reading
would be
something
really good
about,
for.
yeah, like I'm reading something about, the French calendar. What are the things that
Mhm.
happen in a year? And it could be, who does this concern? I don't know.
Right. Was
That's
there,
kind of
yeah,
cool.
people, locations, dates, times, basic
Yeah.
information? Was there actions or culture? So that'd be really good with your nonfiction text or the summaries. Again, you can change the phrases. It don't have to be positive or negative. You could do something where phrases or words that are talking again. I think you said French Revolution was. I don't know, since not knowing the text, but I feel like something where you could just pull it out, identify it, and target it would probably be best for nonfiction. Or like I said, have them do bullet points or main points.
Thanks.
Hmm. Do we have any more questions? Feel free, jump in.
Yeah, a good example with the doodling of a activity that had a built-in time limit, which is great for a lot of students as they know how much time they have and where it's going to start and end. Do you have any
Hmm.
other activities that would be nice, quick, and self-timed like that?
As far as the doodling goes, are you again drawing or doodling? Is that what you're saying, Dave? I just want to make sure I understand the question. Is that correct?
Sure. I was more of thinking like something that had a
Oh,
nice built-in time limit.
as far as the time limit goes, you can set a time limit for any activity and say, hey, you're only going to have 4 minutes to pull out. If we were, let's say, condensing content, you may say, hey, you only have 4 minutes to go back through and pull out the sentences with this one. So we really, a lot of the times, you can just put a time limit on it naturally and just say, hey, you're going to have 5 minutes. And it kind of what that does is when you put people under a time pressure, it's going to pull explicit knowledge forward, but it's also going to drive them to kind of read maybe a little bit more deeply in the text, or in a way, when I say, well, instead of just skimming, they're like, I only have 4 minutes to find this information, so I better make sure that I am reading for content. Does that make sense?
Certainly.
Yeah, but it is like as far as doodling, I can. That's okay. Let me like. I literally have when you hit that link, I'll show you real quick. You these are all my activities. This is my blog. There's emoji draw, picture draw, keywords and pictures, personalization, listen, draw and discuss, read, draw and discuss. I put examples. These are all stuff I really do in my classroom. I put up the work so they can see it. Really fun game. What's in the bag with a bunch of variations. Check it out. Other than that, uh, check that out. That will help you in the drawing. And I do have to say, I know Keith Toda's in the audience there, and I pulled some of his stuff in there too. He does some good stuff with that too, and I know Alan's written about that too, Alan Lodge. So check out their stuff too.
Um, on that note, I know that our next presenter is here, so
Perfect.
definitely let's say thank you one more time for Eric Richards and that outstanding and quick presentation.
It's quick. It was quick. So, but thank you again for everyone being here. I appreciate it.